she claims the Tory party's disastrous kamikaze budget that triggered chaos for millions was, her words, the happiest moment of her premiership.
And I took the decision that we would take the hard decisions first. I think anybody who's turned around, I don't know, an organisation or a business, but in the budget, which was probably the toughest, I'm really pleased that we were able to put so much money into the National Health Service.
Imagine being in Keir Starmer's shoes for a moment. You've just left Parliament, your mind still on the debates of the day. Suddenly, you're confronted by a sea of angry faces, hurling accusations and insults. Your safety is at risk, and you're forced to flee the very institution you serve. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's what happened to the Labour leader yesterday. As we dissect this incident, we'll explore the growing challenges faced by political figures in today's charged climate and what it means for the future of democracy in the UK. As Keir Starmer stepped out of Parliament, the air crackled with an unexpected tension. The Labour leader, likely still mulling over the day's debates and political manoeuvres, found himself thrust into a scene of utter chaos.
Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged to be the proud owner of a copy of the former Prime Minister's new book. It's a rare, unsigned copy.
I think today is an answer to that question in a way, because here we are 10 days past the mayoral election.
We've got a billionaire Prime Minister and a billionaire Prime Minister, both of whose families have used schemes to avoid millions of pounds of tax, smearing a working-class woman.
In a matter of seconds, the usually bustling but orderly streets of Westminster transformed into a volatile powder keg. The first shouts of "traitor" pierced through the air, catching Starmer and his team off guard. What began as a few voices quickly swelled into a cacophony of anger and accusation. A sea of furious faces materialized before them, their eyes locked on the Labour leader with an intensity that would make even the most seasoned politician flinch. Starmer's team, usually composed and ready for any political curveball, found themselves scrambling to react. Their practiced poise crumbled in real time as the situation escalated far beyond the realm of typical political discourse. The protesters, emboldened by their numbers and the element of surprise, pushed closer, their accusations growing more pointed and personal. Amidst the din, shouts about Jimmy Savile cut through the air, a reference to a controversy that had dogged Starmer for months. The protesters, it seemed, were not just expressing general discontent, but had come armed with specific grievances and allegations. This wasn't a spontaneous gathering of disgruntled citizens. It bore all the hallmarks of a targeted action. As the crowd surged forward, the situation teetered on the brink of physical confrontation. Starmer, visibly shaken but attempting to maintain his composure, found himself at the center of a storm he couldn't have anticipated when he woke up that morning. The contrast between the structured debates within Parliament's walls and the raw, unfiltered anger on display outside couldn't have been starker. In a testament to the volatility of the situation, police were forced to intervene. They quickly formed a human barrier between Starmer and the advancing protesters. Their presence, a stark reminder of how quickly political discourse can escalate into a security threat. The scene was one of controlled chaos, with officers struggling to maintain order as protesters continued to hurl abuse and accusations. For Starmer, a man accustomed to the cut and thrust of parliamentary debate, this direct confrontation with public anger was a jarring experience. The immediacy and intensity of the protesters' emotions were a world away from the measured tones and procedural niceties of the House of Commons. As the dust settled on Starmer's chaotic encounter, a chilling question emerged. Had words become weapons in the arena of British politics? The incident forced both politicians and the public to confront an uncomfortable truth about the power of rhetoric in an age of instant communication and heightened polarization. At the heart of this controversy lies Boris Johnson's inflammatory claim about Keir Starmer's alleged failure to prosecute Jimmy Savile. What began as a seemingly off-the-cuff remark in Parliament quickly snowballed into a dangerous narrative that spilled onto the streets. Johnson's words, like a match struck in a room full of gasoline fumes, ignited a firestorm of public outrage. But how did we get here? The journey from parliamentary debate to mob mentality reveals a troubling trend in modern politics. Social media platforms, acting as echo chambers, amplified Johnson's accusation, twisting and distorting it beyond recognition. What started as a political jab morphed into a rallying cry for protesters who saw Starmer not as a political opponent, but as a traitor to be confronted. The incident has laid bare a deep divide within the political establishment itself. Some defend Johnson's remarks as part of the rough and tumble of political discourse, arguing that leaders should be able to withstand criticism. Others, however, see a dangerous escalation that threatens the very foundations of democratic debate. Conservative MP Julian Smith didn't mince words when he called for a full retraction of the false Savile slurs. His statement underscores a growing awareness among politicians of the weight their words carry. Sir Roger Gale, another Conservative, drew a direct line between the deliberately careless use of language in the Commons and the grim scenes outside Parliament. But it's Labour MP Chris Bryant who pulls no punches in his assessment. Boris Johnson has incited this, and I think he has done it deliberately, he declared, accusing the Prime Minister of fostering chaos to hide his moral vacuum. It's a damning indictment that speaks to the level of mistrust and animosity in British politics today. The incident has even drawn comparisons to the storming of the US Capitol, a sobering reminder of how quickly inflammatory rhetoric can spiral into real-world violence. Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, summed up the dangers succinctly. This is what happens when fake news is amplified and given credibility by people who should know better. As the dust settles, experts warn of a troubling trend. The line between passionate debate and dangerous incitement has become increasingly blurred. Political rhetoric, especially when it involves personal attacks or unfounded accusations, can create a mob mentality among supporters. The scene outside Parliament wasn't just a spontaneous outburst, it was the culmination of a carefully cultivated narrative that found fertile ground in an already polarized society. The recent scenes outside Parliament have cast a harsh spotlight on the state of British political discourse. As Conservative MP Julian Smith aptly put it, words matter. What we say and how we say it echoes out far beyond Parliament. It can have serious real-world consequences. This sobering reminder comes at a time when the line between passionate debate and dangerous incitement has become perilously thin. Home Secretary Priti Patel's statement that MPs must be able to go about their lives without fear of threats or intimidation seems almost quaint in light of the completely unacceptable scenes we witnessed. But perhaps the most damning indictment came from Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who warned that politicians who weaponize online conspiracy theories risk inciting hate and abuse. Her call for the Prime Minister to apologize unreservedly underscores the gravity of the situation. As the dust settles on this latest political fracas, one can't help but wonder, is this the new normal for British politics? The true casualty here might not be any individual politician, but rather the very nature of civil discourse itself. It's a sobering thought that should give pause to anyone who values the principles of democracy and reasoned debate.